Remember I said the nativity scene that we all know is actually very incorrect, and that probably upset some people. So today I figured I'd tell you why that scene is incorrect. Probably not going to make people less upset, but at least you'll know the truth. There's always the three wise men or three kings or three magi present in nativity scenes. Well, here's the thing. There's nothing in the Bible that says there were specifically three kings. Over the years, people have decided that there were three men because the Bible does note that they brought three gifts: gold, frankincense, and myrrh. But not only does this not necessarily mean that there were only three of them, does it really make sense to you that kings would not travel with an entourage? No, it does not. And the Bible doesn't actually call them kings either. They are literally called wise men from the East in the account of the birth of Jesus in the Gospel of Matthew, which meant something very different from kings in the time of kings and such. At many courts in the East, including ancient Babylon and Persia, astrologers, psychics, and other spiritualists often served as priestly advisors to kings. They were sometimes called wise men, but they were not kings. I mean, how could people of lesser stature than kings travel all that way to bring baby Jesus gifts? What would have made their trip special if they weren't royalty? And how would it look if a bunch of magicians and psychics and astrologers came and visited baby Jesus in the same Bible that condemns people for practicing witchcraft? That would have been awkward. So the wise men were changed into kings, mostly for politics' sake. Then there's the star above the nativity scene that suggests that the wise men followed the star to a barn where Jesus was born, in the hay among the animals. According to the book of Matthew, a bright star led the Magi from the east until it stopped, quote, over the place where the child was, and upon entering the house, they saw the child with Mary and his mother. That's in Matthew chapter 1, verse 24. Not a barn. Barn is not mentioned. People think it was a barn because Mary is said to have laid Jesus in a manger, which is a feeding trough for animals. But these feeding troughs were also commonly used inside homes because families would sleep upstairs while small animals were kept downstairs on cold nights. And then remember that King Herod, an actual king, heard about the birth of Jesus and had all the male babies younger than 2 be killed to make sure this king of the Jews, as Jesus was being called, wouldn't usurp him. So, that took a few days, right? So, no, the star did not lead the wise men to a barn where baby Jesus lay in a feeding trough among cute little sheep and full-grown cows and horses and stuff just after his birth. They actually got to the house quite a few days after Jesus was born. And it's wild that people who claim to be Christians have filed lawsuits to display a very incorrect depiction of the birth of the messenger of peace on earth and goodwill toward all men on public properties, funded by the public dollars of many people who might not even believe in the story behind the nativity mashup. And it's even more wild that these folks don't realize that their insistence on Christian supremacy and the demonization of other spiritual beliefs, or no spiritual belief, is in direct opposition to the example and message of the Prince of Peace they claim to worship and celebrate this season. But that's a sure indication that what those people worship and celebrate is actually settler colonialism, white supremacy, and capitalism, not Jesus. So here's what I think we should do. Instead of fighting over nativity scenes, we should unleash the most horrifying nightmare of a Christmas tradition we can find on people who have abused the meaning of the birth of Christ, which is supposed to be hope for the hopeless, powerless, and oppressed who live in an imperialist oppressive system like the Hebrews in Jerusalem did at the time of Jesus' birth. Like Krampus, who is a demonic half-goat monster with horns and a long tongue, who drags chains behind him, carrying a birch whip to beat bad children, and sometimes carries a basket or sack to kidnap them in. On the eve of St. Nicholas, 5th of December, that's Krampusnacht, celebrated in Austria, Slovenia, Croatia, and some parts of northern Italy, when Krampuses march through alpine towns in elaborate, sinister costumes. Well, it's a little too late to unleash Krampus on Congress, but, maybe a heads up for next year. Or maybe we can do Mary Luid. We can dress up like a creature with a horse's skull with fake eyeballs in the eye sockets, a mouth with jagged teeth ajar, wearing a long, billowing cloak, trailed by people ominously chanting. This is done in Wales, where these costumed folks knock on random people's doors, hoping their children will answer, and when they do, they terrify the children with the costumes, and then they wish everybody Happy New Year. I mean, if politicians aren't afraid of us not voting for them anymore, maybe a little fear of Mary Luid might help. Or maybe we can put a word in with St. Nicholas to redirect the energies of Pierre Fouettard. Fouettard was a butcher. He and his wife were said to have kidnapped, robbed, and killed wealthy children, then carved up their bodies and hid them in salting barrels. St. Nicholas is said to have discovered the crime and brought the children back to life. This is a whole horror movie. As punishment, he forced Pierre Fouettard into bondage, forced to follow St. Nick around France, Belgium, and Switzerland, dealing with problem children while St. Nick gave gifts to the good children. But I say we should tell St. Nick to tell Fouettard to stop terrorizing the children and maybe see if he can put the fear of Fouettard in some heartless, greedy politicians and corporate executives. Now, look, these European Alpine Christmas traditions are based on weird myths and are really more funny and entertaining than they are serious. And of course, some people believe that the virgin birth of Jesus Christ is just as mythological as Krampus, Mary Luid, or Pierre Fouettard. And I think that's perfectly okay. I really do. Believe whatever gives you whatever you need to get through this life. But what is not okay is living in the richest country on the planet, where people are hungry, homeless, hopeless, alone, destitute, unloved, incarcerated, and forgotten, struggling to survive from paltry, low-wage paycheck-to-paycheck jobs, working in jobs without benefits or even safe working condition, denied free travel between man-made borders, oppressed in any way, every way, by capitalism, white supremacy, xenophobia, homophobia, transphobia, militarism, while we fight over whose spiritual belief is right or better, rather than fighting for each other and for a better world for us all. That's wrong. So I wish you, truly, I do, goodwill toward all people on earth. I wish you peace on earth, but peace only if you are willing to fight for it. Follow Luqman Nation on patreon.com/LuqmanNation for lots of great content.